Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video.
I'm female, 25. My mom left when I was 12 without a single word of warning. It came as a shock to me and my dad. Obviously, a kid doesn't have the best handle on all these things, but from my point of view, my parents had a stable, loving relationship. We weren't living the most extravagant life ever, and sometimes we'd have to struggle a little bit, but despite all of that, I never felt like I had a childhood that was lacking. Sure, I didn't get access to fancy toys whenever I wanted, like other kids in my grade, but I don't think I assigned too much value to these things. Mom sometimes used to find it a bit tough to deal with, especially when Dad got laid off. But that never felt like enough of a reason to leave the family behind. Dad was beaten up when she left, and we never even got an official divorce from her. In fact, all we got was a letter addressed to Dad telling him not to look for her and that she won't ever come back. Nobody, not even her family, knew where she was. There was no return address either. After waiting for a year, hoping and praying that his wife would come to her senses, Dad finally had to choose the last resort and ended up filing for a divorce via publication. Since there was no way to serve her any papers, he put out a public notice, waited 6 years, and then finally got a divorce. This whole process took a lot out of my dad, and he began to drink quite heavily. He tried his best to be there for me, but some evenings he'd just drink away bottle after bottle and sit in silence. That kind of environment made me grow up fast, and I wanted to do my very best to lift the two of us into a better place. Naturally, I harbored a lot of resentment towards my mom during this time, although nowadays I've mellowed out a little bit. Whatever her reasons for leaving, it was her choice. What I still cannot forgive, though, is leaving without telling us why she left. There was no need to walk off without giving any closure to your husband of 15 years and your only daughter. Despite this rough period in my life, I kept my head down and studied hard. Eventually, I got a scholarship for engineering at a prestigious university and landed a high-paying job right after graduation. It was my first step out of the rut Mom had left us in. But celebrations were cut short too fast. Dad passed away a week after I graduated from a sudden heart attack. The post-mortem found that his heart muscles had been weakened due to his high blood pressure, which in itself was an effect of his drinking. Although Dad had sobered up by the time I was 18 or so, the damage had already been done. It was a terrible blow for me. Although he couldn't always be the best father figure, he always tried to work through his pain and find ways to keep me happy, especially when I was a little kid who didn't know any better. After that, I was basically alone. I did have extended family, yeah, but none of them was super close to me. I was given all of Dad's assets in the will and the home we lived in, and was kicked into adulthood without the man I loved and respected to guide me. I suffered and was let go from my first job. I went through a lot of personal struggle and only came out the other side due to investing in grief counseling and also meeting my fiance, Derek, 27. Derek helped me get my life back on track, and with his help, I applied my skills to start my own boutique tech consulting firm. It took off a lot faster than either of us expected, and I ended up becoming rich fast. With that kind of traction, I was often invited to a bunch of interviews and podcasts to talk about what it's like to be an entrepreneur, and I often spoke about my journey very personally. That is to say, I often mentioned my childhood, my father's passing, and the dark places I had been in before reaching a high point in my life. Due to that, I kind of became a micro celebrity, and my social media page gained a lot of traction. However, due to this fame, I got a lot of unwanted attention. A few scammers had preyed on my openness by pretending to be my long-lost mother and trying to weasel their way back into my life. Yet the only things they could tell me was snippets that I'd already spoken about in interviews. I was honestly getting tired of dealing with all of these DMs until one account took me completely by surprise. Someone replied to my IG story from a recent business summit claiming to be my mother yet again, but this time mentioning some details from my childhood that I'd never let slip. Details like my favorite meal, which school I went to, and stuff like that. I showed this to Derek, and we decided to snoop through the account, which had messaged me to make sure this was legit. Going through it, we saw a woman who looked a lot like my mom, at least from what I remembered. This woman was living somewhere in Mexico, a far cry from where we used to live, Brooklyn, and seemed to be married to a different man. Bits and pieces seemed to come together, and against my better judgment, I decided to respond to this woman. I texted back asking what she wanted, and my mom responded by saying that she didn't want anything at all, simply a chance to meet up and make amends, and to help me on my journey. She was ready to travel back to the States and meet up if I would simply give her the chance. Although I remained hesitant, Derek asked me once again to see if this would help me with closure. He's always been super understanding of my family trauma, but I could see that he wanted this to be a chance for me to have my family connection again. I ended up agreeing. When the day arrived, I felt nauseous yet also curious. We decided to meet at the hotel where Mom was staying. I'll keep things brief, but it went well. Mom told me that she had left as Dad was apparently pressuring her to use her savings for really frivolous things during the time he was laid off, and this snowballed into a terrible fight. She even told me that Dad had been physically abusive to her once, and because of this, she left without telling anybody anything for her safety. I was shocked and also reluctant to believe her at first, but she was convincing. Furthermore, as a kid, my memory of those times was hazy. All those years I had spent resenting Mom and staying with Dad now seemed hollow, and I felt guilty for harboring anger towards her. We made up and promised to stay in touch. And Mom told me something else too. Her current husband was interested in investing in my business. She said that she began to work in New York after leaving Dad, and during this time she met Gabriel, a millionaire tycoon from Mexico. He had treated her right and also found a good foundation in my ideas, so he wanted to come on board as a partner. I was ecstatic. Out of the blue, I was getting a chance to scale up my business and could work on rebuilding my relationship with Mom. I was super conflicted this whole time as Dad's memory had been tainted for me, but I wanted to press on. However, I did want to vet this Gabriel guy before bringing him on board, so I had my PR team do a bit of sleuthing. Turns out he's a tycoon, all right, but also a deeply problematic person. He seems to have done a ton of underhanded stuff like fraud and pushing rivals out of business. This made me really concerned, and I spoke to Mom about it. Nervously, she said, "Oh, Gabriel has just been in the business for a long time and has a lot of rivals. Don't pay it any mind. I trust him. It's a smear campaign." But I didn't find that to be very convincing. I began to second guess letting Mom and her new husband into my life. Before I could begin to investigate, though, a disaster struck. As it got leaked that I was considering taking on board a notably sketchy guy as a partner, I had to act fast to make sure I still had the trust of my clients and released a public statement saying that I wouldn't do anything of the sort, immediately prompting a call from Mom. While she started cool enough, the conversation got heated and she began talking about how unfair this was to her. I had no idea how I was being unfair. Like I had just said, I'll think about letting this guy into my business, nothing more. I told her that she was being difficult and we ended the call harshly. Was I an AH for publicly denying any involvement? Update 1. Yep, Gabriel is a scumbag. Further digging by my people just proved that. And what's odder is that they managed to find some pictures of the clips from ages ago showing my mom and Gabriel together. The date was before she even left me and Dad, and made everything she said seem suspicious. I'm going to confront her about this. Update 2. I showed Mom the pictures and she denied everything despite it being painfully obvious to me now that she was cheating on Dad. I asked her, so what else was a lie? And she caved and said that she'd made up stuff about Dad to get back in my life. She had run off with Gabriel but wanted to be a part of my life again, probably because I was successful. I was furious and couldn't believe how she'd made me doubt everything like that. I told her to frick off and never come back. Derek feels like an ass for pushing the idea on me and has apologized for not knowing what would happen. I forgive him, but I can't help but feel betrayed by Mom. Update 3. Mom kept trying to contact me online and once even showed up near my office, but I'm done with her. I filed for a restraining order and don't ever want to see her face again. I'm trying to put out fires in the firm due to the association with Gabriel, and I'm thinking of going public about my story with Mom to explain the whole situation. NTA, I was going to go for NAH because I get why your mom would be pissed that her husband was called out like that, but it's clear that she's insane. She sullied your father's name just for personal gain. This is a crazy story, OP. You should legit try and make a movie out of it. I wasn't even sure what your mom's game was after 13 years, but it's clear she was looking at you as an investment opportunity. Terrible, terrible woman. Thank God you cut her off. Your fiancé is too trusting. Next story. I got a call telling me my wife had an accident and is in hospital. I have a 4-year-old daughter and I adopted my 12-year-old niece a few years ago after her parents died. I called every single one of our babysitters and none of them could come. I was in a hurry, so I asked my niece to look after my daughter until I came back. She refused and we argued for a while. She yelled at me and said, "I'm not your personal babysitter." I was so desperate and angry at the moment, so I yelled at her and told her, "Yes, you are. That's why I adopted you." I truly regret what I said, and I know it was wrong and I'm an a-hole for saying this, but I was worried about my wife and I had no other option. After that, she agreed to do this and I left. On my way back, I knew she would be upset, so I bought her several gifts and snacks to apologize. She took them and we seemed fine, but later I got a call from my sister telling me I'm an a-hole. I know what I said was very wrong, but I don't think I'm an a-hole for expecting her to help in an emergency. Edit. I found the gifts that I bought her in my daughter's room. I asked her why she put them there, and she started crying and told me, "You should give them to your real daughter." I apologized and hugged her, and after she calmed down a little bit, I told her that she is my real daughter, and I explained to her that I was just worried about my wife and I didn't mean what I said and should have never said it. I adopted her because I love her and she knows it. I wasn't her only option. She wanted me to adopt her because she knows how much I love her. She still didn't want to take those gifts because it made her feel bad, so we returned them and went shopping. I bought her another gift for being helpful to family in an emergency. My wife is okay now and she is back home, but she still can't be alone all day with a toddler, so I promised her, as soon as my wife is completely okay, to look after my daughter alone. Me and her would have an entire day, just the two of us, doing whatever she wants. I wanted to start with an NTA, but I was so desperate and angry at the moment, so I yelled at her and told her, "Yes, you are. That's why I adopted you." What the frick is wrong with you? Not even in the biggest fear and stress you can say that to your child. Never, ever. But if you're honest with yourself, this thought lives in your head and is the truth. Otherwise, you wouldn't have said this in anger. Of course, you can ask her to be a babysitter in an emergency or else, which she is allowed to decline. But it's not her job to babysit your biological child. Just because she's older and you want this. You adopted her, she's your child too, not your slave. YTA big time for screaming and what you said. And you messed up the relationship with your niece, as you call her. Maybe don't call her your niece. It's your daughter. So your daughter is more important than your niece? Did you really think gifts will repair this? She won't ever forget or forgive this. Poor girl, lost her parents, got adopted, but is still just the niece, and is always second place, and obviously your free babysitter for the future. YTA, you somehow managed to avoid screaming at any of the other people who couldn't help you out, that it was an emergency and they owed you, so yeah, not buying that desperation was the only thing behind that little slip of yours. Hope you save money from therapy, along with all the bribes that won't actually make up for having revealed your true feelings to her and just how tenuous her position in this family is if she doesn't follow your orders. Because holy shit, is this an a-hole of the year contender? Next story. My girlfriend and I have been dating about 2 years, and when we originally started dating, she had a typical lifestyle. Drinks on the weekends, smoked a little weed now and then, and ate out a few times a week. About a year ago, she was diagnosed with PCOS and was devastated by the diagnosis. She began looking for ways to treat it, but there doesn't seem to be any cures, only treatments. So she went off the deep end by cutting out all alcohol, no more weed, no sugar, low carb diet, very strict. And she started working out, mostly HIIT and yoga, 4 times a week. Her ovaries were looking better from the latest scan, so she is convinced she can heal herself by fixing up her diet. Problem is, she's taking it way too far. She won't allow herself a cheat day, and she brings her own food even to friends' houses. She won't drink even a little, even at friends' weddings, and it's annoying because she started preaching health every time anyone asks her about her changes. She's always telling me about the latest diet and exercise things she found out about that she thinks will help her PCOS. We can't go out for dinner anymore because we either go to the same healthy food spot we've been going to all year, or she wants to cook at home. She doesn't want to go to the bar anymore or really go out and party anymore, and that was a big thing for us before her diagnosis. I got annoyed one day when she wouldn't eat what my parents were cooking when we were visiting and was bringing her own lunch, and told her she wasn't fun anymore. I mean, how she was so chill before and how she's gotten so serious about everything now. She got upset and yelled at me for not caring if she can have children or not and stormed out. AITA? YTA. While I understand your frustration at the lifestyle change, if drinking with her, going out to eat with her, etc., are such important things to you, maybe it's time to communicate that and potentially end the relationship so that she can find someone who can support her in her new lifestyle. Telling her she's not fun anymore while she's managing a chronic and painful condition is an a-hole move. And yes, if she does not manage it, it can affect her fertility. May I also add, how would you want her to react if you were diagnosed with something that required a change in lifestyle? Would you be okay with being told you're not fun anymore, as if those fun things take priority over your health? Sounds like you think your girlfriend is overreacting to her diagnosis by changing her lifestyle, which is pretty funny because anytime anyone is diagnosed with most things, they are told by doctors to change their lifestyle for a more healthier one. I do know for a fact that with PCOS, there is no cure, but the way to manage it and be able to have children is often through a low-carb, no-sugar diet and exercise. Additionally, there are other negative consequences to having PCOS in addition to potential infertility. This is funny to me because don't you think she'd love to get drunk and eat all the pizza and have a night of totally cheating on her diet? Do you think she's making these health-conscious choices to spite you? I'm not understanding why you can't find ways to support her lifestyle while still being able to have fun. Frankly, if you tell her she's no longer fun because she's had to change her lifestyle, I hope she dumps you. It's insane to be upset at someone you love for making healthier choices just because it is inconvenient for you. YTA. YTA, try looking into what she's going through so you have a better understanding of how debilitating it is, and then hopefully you'll understand better why she's happy to make the sacrifices that she has. You sound embarrassed by the fact that she needs to do things differently because of her medical condition. Learn how to be a more supportive partner unless you want to lose this relationship. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.